Now that we have some understanding of doing keyword research, we're ready for a more formal overview of search engine optimization and what it involves. Now with search engine optimization, again, the idea is that if we go to Google and do a search for, again, the keywords that our target audience will be looking for. So again, I'll do a quick search for pest control Toronto. Google gives us a bunch of search results. And so let's just take a quick look at it. This first section here that's colored, these are paid advertisements. These are not organic searches. These are the paid searches. Also on this right-hand side, these are paid advertisements. Below that, we're often going to get these what are called local searches. And you can tell they're local searches because they have these little map marker icons beside them. What Google does is some pretty complex processing when you do a search. First of all, it tries to geolocate your IP to find out where in the world you are located, and then it tries to serve you results that are closest to you. Now that's a simplification of what it does, but that's the idea. It gives you local results first. We're going to talk a little bit more about how to get listed on these local results. As we scroll down a bit further, you see these are kind of the traditional regular results that we get. And these results are the ones that we can have direct control over how high in the list we can get. Some statistics show that it's really the top 3 results that are the ones that get attention. Anything below that is getting a very significant drop off in terms of the amount of clicks that ever go to it. And as we go beyond the first page of results, hardly any of these results are ever clicked on beyond the first page. So it's important as much as possible so that we can get our result high up in the list as much as possible. That is the idea of search engine optimization, is to make our page get as high in that list as possible. Now, how does it do that? Well, Google has a little robot that it has created that goes around and visits every website that it knows of in the entire world, and it starts indexing these pages. So it reads the pages and just starts to learn what it can about them, and then it starts to index them, and it does a whole bunch of very complicated analysis on the page. So if we take a look at this page, this is again another pest control company, and if the Google robot, it's actually called Googlebot, if Googlebot goes to look at this page, you got to remember Googlebot is just a piece of code. It's not a human being with eyes. So the Googlebot is looking at the source code for the page. So this is what the Googlebot sees. Right? This is the source code for the page. It's a bunch of HTML and JavaScript and CSS. Now to you and I, most likely this is just gibberish. Now, just so happens I'm a web developer, so I understand all this stuff, but to the average person, this doesn't make any sense. But the Google robot has been programmed to make sense of this, and it takes little pieces of some of the under-the-cover information and tries to make sense of it. So, for example, we look here, there's some keywords in the metadata that we've specified, and then a meta description. We talked a little bit about that in a previous lecture. And what it does is it takes a look at the text on the page, and it tries to match up all of these words with, what people are searching for, and so forth. And that's how it kind of builds its index. Now, Google also tries to figure out the authority or the strength of the value of this particular page by ranking it against other pages that have similar information. But how can Google figure out if this page is more informative than another page about a similar topic? Well, the best way that Google does that is by checking how many other pages on the internet are linking to this page. So when other pages on the internet link to this page, that gives this page authority, what it's called. So this page becomes an authority on pest control when other pages are linking to it, because Google figures, if other people are linking to it, it must be important. And the more authoritative pages that link to it, the better. So it's again a long, complicated process and a very complicated algorithm that figures all of this out, but there are some things that we can do to help influence the Googlebot to make sure that our page is being indexed correctly. Now, we're going to not get into a lot of the technical details on how to do these things. Those things have been covered well in other courses. In this lecture, what we're going to do is just mention them and make sure that you're aware of what they are. And if you have questions, I'm happy to help answer some of the details on how to do that. All the pages on the internet are ranked against each other. In fact, there's a service available called Alexa, which tries to rank all the pages in the world. In fact, if we take a look at this page, Coots Pest Control, and look up the Alexa rank for it, I happen to have an Alexa rank plugin for my browser. So this page is ranked number 2,231,343 in the world. Okay, so the higher the Alexa rank, the less popular it is. And Google is got an Alexa rank of number 1. Facebook has an Alexa rank of number 2. That's kind of the idea, so the strength of the pages. And you'll see that it ranks differently in particular countries. Now this again is a local business, so it is only serving a small community, so ranking it against all the pages in the world isn't really a fair comparison because it is only serving a very local community. So we get a little better idea when we look at just the traffic in Canada, which this page happens to be serving the Ottawa area in Canada. And so it's got a rank of 38,023 in Canada, which is very decent for a website that just serves a local community. Now, what things can we do to influence the Googlebot and our Google search result rankings when people are doing searches? Turns out that there are two different ways. There's what's called on-page optimization and off-page optimization. On-page optimization is anything that you can actually do to your site to make it as easy and clean and simple for the Googlebot to read as possible so that it can, again, not have any problems reading it. Got to keep in mind it's a program that's doing the reading and not a human, so it's looking for very specific things. So the on-page search engine optimization is what we can do where we can have a direct result. Off-page are things that we have less control over, such as other pages that are linking to our page, although we'll talk a little bit about that in another lecture. For this lecture, we're going to focus on the on-page things that we can do. Now, the first thing that you want to do on your website is to make sure that you have what are called search engine friendly URLs. I'm assuming that you're using a content management system that we recommended earlier in the course, like WordPress or Joomla or Drupal. And when you hover over some of these menu items, and say you click on one of them, a search engine friendly URL is one that has a very simple permalink, a very simple URL. If you don't have search engine friendly URLs turned on, it might look something like this: index.php ? ID equals, and then there might be a whole bunch of stuff after this that helps the content management system figure out what page it is that you're trying to serve up. Now, this looks terrible to Google. Human beings can't read that, right? Google wants the pages to be able to be readable by humans. So having search engine friendly URLs is always a good thing. So you want to make sure that you have that turned on in your content management system. Wherever possible, you also want to have that permalink in the URL. You want that to be using the keywords that you're trying to target for that particular page. Each page on your website should be targeting perhaps a separate set of keywords. Okay, your home page is going to be kind of a generic one, but every page on your website should be a little bit different and potentially targeting a different set of keywords. For example, in our pest control example, we may have a page like the one that we're looking at now on bats. So the ideal thing is to have the permalink say bats, and we want the page title to also be bats. The title is what we can see at the top of the tab. So in this case, we see that it is called bats. That's good. And the page metadata we also want to be about bats. So the page keywords should be perhaps Toronto pest control bats, or how to get rid of bats, how to deal with bat guana, or whatever the particular keyword is for that page. Same with the description. It should be specific to that page about bats. And then if I have a separate page about bed bugs or a separate page about cockroaches, again, the title, the permalink, the metadata should all be different for that page, so that when the Googlebot goes and starts indexing all of these pages, it sees, oh, this page is about cockroaches, this page is about bats, and it can kind of index each page separately, so that when people are doing their keyword search, you don't want to just stuff every possible keyword that you handle in your whole site on every page. So for example, you don't want the bats page to say, we handle cockroaches and ants and squirrels and termites, and just put everything onto that one page. Because one, it's not correct, because that page doesn't talk about all of those things. And two, Google will start to look at that and say, okay, they're just doing what's called keyword stuffing, and putting a bunch of keywords on that page that really aren't very relevant. Because Google tries to figure out, okay, you're targeting these keywords, but what is the actual content of your page? Right? If your page is really talking about bats, then why do you have all these other keywords listed? And it will start to discredit some of the keywords that you're trying to qualify for. As much as possible, you also want to make sure, now that you have your keywords that you're trying to optimize for, that those keywords are used in the content of your page as well. Remember that people are searching for these things, so you want to use the words that people are searching for in the content of your page, not just in the title and metadata. As you use the keywords that people are searching for, Google will index it better, people will find it better, and it's just going to resonate more. So you'll want to avoid using what I like to call clever titles, maybe word plays and different things, unless people are searching for those directly. You want to use the words that people are actually searching for in your content as much as possible. You'll also want to make sure that your web code, the HTML code, is clean. That means that it validates correctly, because when the Googlebot tries to read it, again, it's just code that's reading your web page, and it needs to be able to correctly interpret the page. So your code should be correct. Again, if you're using a content management system, usually that's going to be fine. Another thing to look for is that all of your images have what are called alt tags or alt descriptions. So a good way to tell if that is the case is just hover over the image, and in my case I'm using the Google Chrome browser. I'm just going to go to Inspect Element, and it highlights the image. So here's the actual image tag, and there's this one property called alt equals, and that should always be present. You want it to say alt equals and then some description of the actual image. Now again, where possible, use the keyword in the alt description, but again, don't stuff the alt tags with keywords. You want it to be actually descriptive of what that image is. So in our case, I could have been more specific here and said, instead of just alt equals bats, it could have been alt equals, if this is a vampire bat, I could have said that, or, what is it about the bat? In this case, it's a tick on the bat wing. So you want to be as specific as possible with your alt description on images. Another important thing, and getting more increasingly important, is to make sure that your website is what's called responsive. That means that it looks proper on a regular web browser and on mobile devices. The proliferation of mobile devices is just exploding like crazy, and it's going to get more and more where pages are being displayed on mobile devices, which have a smaller screen size. So in this case, if I take this website and just shrink it down a little bit, we're going to see that it actually begins changing itself. See that modification there, where the menu kind of changes and it jumps down, and now it's hidden on a different place. So if I look at this on a mobile device, even on a mobile phone or a tablet, it's going to look great. So you definitely want to have a responsive template that can handle different screen sizes, because again, as mobile devices become more and more prominent, to be able to look proper on a mobile site, it's only going to be good for your business. Another thing to consider is the reading level of your website. The Googlebot does some complicated analysis using mathematical algorithms to figure out what is the reading level of your website. Now, if your website is using a lot of technical jargon and large words and complicated sentence structures, it's going to rank it a little bit lower than it would normally be. You want to make sure that it's written at probably a grade 6 or 7 level of reading. And if it gets any higher than that, then it gets kind of difficult for the average reader to digest quickly. So you want to keep that as simple as possible and make it very, very readable. We're going to cover in another lecture something called sitemaps, which is very, very important as well. But for now, I'm just going to mention that. We'll cover that in more detail later. Another important thing is to make sure that your site speed is up as high as possible. You want your page to be able to load quickly, and in order to do that, you just make sure that you have a good host. So I recommended HostGator. They're quite fast. And also that you don't have anything overly complicated going on in the background of your website that is causing it to load slowly, because a faster page load means a better Google rank as well. Now, there's a lot more on-page SEO that you can do, and we've just kind of whizzed through the highlights of what you can do. But if you take control of the things that we've just covered and only work on those, that is going to be sufficient to get you a decent rank in Google and make sure that the Googlebot is able to read your page as cleanly and clearly as possible. Again, we had talked about some off-page search engine optimization that can be done, and those are what's going to be covered in the next few lectures in the search engine optimization section.